Welcome back to Effective English Email. This lecture is going to be about good habits with email. As you're starting to make email and checking email part of your daily routine, your daily schedule, I hope you really consider the habits that you are ingraining into your daily practice, your workflow, in other words. I really think it's important to have good habits with email use. And so that's what this unit is going to be all about before we really get into, loading up your email account with newsletters and things like that. So habits are really important. And that's the first thing we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about actively using email, right? So a lot of my students and people I meet, they use email in a very passive way. They just receive email. They're not really using email as a way to make contact with other people and engage in conversation. They're not really using email to make a contact with people and engage in a conversation of any kind, right? And so those are the two areas we're going to talk about. And I'm actually going to give you a homework assignment for this unit. Okay? So I really like this quote by Steven Pressfield. It says, "The difference between an amateur and a professional is in their habits. An amateur has amateur habits. A professional has professional habits. We can never free ourselves from habit, but we can replace bad habits with good ones." Now, in the case of email, if you're not really using email much already, we're in a really good opportunity because we can really build the habits around email from the start. They're going to help you with your productivity. For a lot of people, email is really bad for their productivity because of all the bad habits that they have around it. So why are habits important? Because they limit the number of decisions our brains have to make. We get into our routines. If you have a habit in the morning of a certain, routine that you do, you don't really think about it that much. There's not very many decisions involved. And so there's a thing called decision fatigue. If you're knowledgeable about social psychology or behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, any of these fields, you probably know about decision fatigue, which is you wake up in the morning and you have a certain number of decisions that you will be able to make with your full energy and your full brain power. But as the day goes on and you're making all these decisions throughout the day, you have less and less, your reserves of willpower get reduced, right? So, having habits in place, positive habits, productive habits, help you save those decisions, right? You can hang on to those for later in the day, when you need them for work, for your research, for teaching, and so on. Right? And you can approach those things with all of your energy and vigor. All right, so good email habits to start out with. Number one, check email just once or twice per day. Okay, that's probably the number one thing. I hope you do not get into a habit of checking it 50 times a day. You're checking it on your phone. You're on your computer all day long, so you just leave Gmail open. That's a quick way to get into some, waste a lot of time, right? You're going to waste a lot of time if you get into these habits. Limit the amount of time that you're using as well when you do check the email. So do it if you have a lunch appointment. Do it every day at 11:30 before you go out to lunch with your coworkers, your colleagues, or whatever it is, right? Before lunchtime. So you've got that 30 minutes to process the email. And I use process rather than check. Check email sounds very passive. He's like, oh yeah, okay, I checked it, I'm done, right? Well, that's fast, but it doesn't address any of the problems that are in your email. So you have things that start to collect and build up. Pretty soon you've got 100 emails that are unanswered that you need to deal with, right? Don't do that. Process it immediately. You've got that 30 minutes a day set aside for email. Either delete or archive or respond right away. And you can respond very quickly, right? Respond, just a few sentences is usually enough for a response, right? Usually you don't have to write long thought out responses that take a huge amount of time. So now to actually be active and productive and to have English helping you in your career and in your English study, there are some productive habits you can involve. Number one, join useful email newsletter lists. I've got one that you can join, and you're gonna join it for your homework today. So we'll get to that in a little bit later. But join these useful email newsletter lists, newsletters that are geared towards things you're interested in, especially things you are doing anyway. Okay, so if you regularly check, current events, what's going on in the news, right? Get a news, a top headlines of the day newsletter that gets sent to your email every morning, right? And then you have taken that interest, that hobby, and you're doing it in English, you're doing it through English, using Gmail. You are reinforcing a couple of the things that you want to do, right? So my concept of fluency is actually a little bit different from other people. What I hope you can do through fluency is kind of effectively move back and forth when there's some kind of breakdown in communication. And you need to be comfortable with English to do that. And I say that the best way to get comfortable with English is to have it part of your daily life. It's not some foreign thing that you're studying. It's just part of your life, right? It's part of your life. You're using it every day, right? If you have hobbies, you're studying English to support the hobby because of your hobby, you have to engage in English. Maybe it's a soccer team that you're on and there's a bunch of foreign players on the soccer team or something like that, right? So the motivation, if you do it this way, if you think of English this way, you are kind of changing it from an extrinsic to an intrinsic motivation for studying English and for practicing English, right? The other thing you're doing is, no, I forgot about that. Okay. Anyway, another tip is using Google Alerts. Google has a system for, Google is number one, it's a search engine, right? It's a huge, massive, powerful search engine. That's the core of their business. They have a service where anytime some new blog article or new newspaper article comes up on a certain topic, you can get an alert about that into your email address, right? So whatever you're interested in, this can be professional interests. So if you're studying like gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, G-E-R-D, for example, you can set up a Google alert to anytime something hits the net with GERD in it, you're going to get that notification in your email. Right? This is really useful for scholars, actually. But, if you're a hobbyist, if you're starting that blog, like we mentioned before, and maybe it's not a professional topic, maybe it's a hobby like camping, you're really getting into camping, you can set up, certain things like, car camping as a Google alert, and any kind of news article that comes out about car camping is going to be in your inbox, and then you can write a blog about that. That's really easy content that you can curate for your blog, introduce people to this news article that just came out. The main thing is that you're using it actively as you also receive it, right? You're receiving newsletters, you're receiving Google Alerts. I want you to actually be using it. So if you think about your role models, maybe a celebrity, maybe an author or something, think about somebody that you would like to reach out to, and how you could do that. So just have them in mind for the homework assignment, right? So the homework. Identify a public figure or role model that you want to say hi to, right? So you're going to just compliment them or say, you're a really great writer. I just wanted to say thank you for writing your books and that I'm a big fan. Okay, so really simple, right? That's going to be the objective. Pretty simple objective. What I want you to do is email me telling me about that person, who it is, and how you think you can contact them. And you can do stevendwardmpa@gmail.com. I will actually add you to my newsletter this way. So I'm going to take this as you wanting to be on my newsletter, and where we talk about all of this kind of stuff. That's homework assignment number 1. Homework assignment number 2 is sign up for a news alert on some kind of hobby or professional interest area that you want to be up to date, up to the minute, right? You want to get all the breaking news. As soon as it hits the net, you want to know about it. Whatever that is, sign up for it for your new Gmail address. So these 2 things. Send me an email about the person that you want to get in touch with, and I'll try to come up with some kind of advice for you for getting in touch with them. Number 2, set up a Google alert to go to your Gmail and start getting in the practice of checking your email for this purpose. Okay, so that has been my presentation on reinforcing the email habit with good habits, right? We're building good, positive, productive habits around email that are going to help you in your career, as well as help you with your English studies. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next lecture.